TPOT 2 has recently dropped, which made fans very excited. We've been waiting a whole year for this episode to come. But as you know, there's a lot of contestants that will be competing in this object show, but some will get more screen time than others, which begs the question, which contestants made a major impact on Teapot 2 and which ones were left as mere background characters? Today, we're going to be ranking all of those characters based on how much screen time they got, how much lines they got, and just how much of a difference or impact they made to the show. We'll be splitting these into two categories, the irrelevant category and the relevant category. The irrelevant category is basically anyone who just hardly made any impact at all, maybe only a few lines, and anyone else who made some difference or had some form of screen time will be sorted into the relevant category. Tied in 64th place, we have Tennis Ball in the irrational category. Tennis Ball only has a few lines specifically talking about James getting shot by Teardrop's laser. Well, which isn't a line, but I guess like an event. And Tennis Ball doesn't do anything too important in this episode. Also tied in 64th place, we have Fries in the irrelevant category. Basically, everyone in the irrelevant category is in 64th place tied, because these are just like a group of people who didn't do much. The only time I remember seeing Fries is asking about why the King at Stake song didn't change, and we can also see him building blocks with his team, but that isn't even that important because at the end of the day, Team Are You Okay wins with one block, so it didn't even make a difference, and Fries got virtually no screen time in this episode. Also tied in 64th place in the irrelevant category. Yeah, you're gonna hear me say that a lot this video. We have Foldy. Foldy does almost nothing for the strongest team on earth. We only see her talk with Eggy for a bit. Like, come on, I know you don't have arms, so you probably can't place any blocks, but you could at least have stopped Teardrop from pushing away your final block at the end. Like, you basically sat there and did nothing, and Foldy also got very little lines, which also puts her in this category. Also tied in 42nd place in the irrelevant category, we have Ice Cube. We only see this scene where Ice Cube dies a lot, and also when she tried to stop Death Pact again from stealing her team's blocks, but she gets knocked off a cliff and dies. And other than that, she doesn't have any major importance in Teapot 2. Yet another contestant tied in 43rd place, we have Puffball. We don't see Puffball doing much in this video either. All we see her is chasing off Death Pact again, talking about using super glue, and other than that, Puffball doesn't do very much. Next up, 43rd place tie in the irrelevant category, we have Saw. Saw doesn't do much in this video or episode. We see Saw smelling a funny flower like Pin says. That's pretty much it. In the end, we see Needle cut the blocks in half using Saw, which saves them. And because of this, some could argue that Saw shouldn't be in the irrelevant category, but I think she still is because it was Needle who cut the blocks off, not Saw. Needle could have grabbed Rocky, caused him to vomit, to evaporate the block, splitting it in half, or maybe use another sharp object. Like, she didn't need Saw specifically. It could have been anything, really, to break the blocks in half. Maybe she could have even just untangled Bell and get the whole stack back. You never know. The point is, Needle is the one who's important, not Saw, so Saw still gets really low, dead last in 43rd place. Since they're both in this scene, I might as well rank them together. Tied in 43rd place, our last two contestants in the irrelevant category is Yellowface and Bottle. We don't see them do much this episode. Bottle basically dies, and that's all they really do. And Yellowface doesn't do much either. They have like one or two lines and appear a bit, but they're not really the most important contestant for the S. And for that, they're the last contestants in 43rd place. From 42nd all the way down to 34th, we have Daly, the first contestant to be in the rational category. Now, Neely doesn't do much this video. Some might even argue that she should be in 42nd, just like the irrational contestants. But I put her here because she did cause the acid pool and that gave Pillow and Price Tag a little bit of screen time. So although her contributions to this episode is very minor, it's still a little bit, which just helps her escape out of 42nd place. Circling their way to 33rd place, we have Clock. Now Clock has a pretty decent amount of lines compared to some of the previous contestants, and that's why they're in relevant category. Another reason why I put them here is because we see Winner ask Clock about an issue that Eggy may have, and this could potentially open up an arc between Winner, Eggy, Teardrop, and Clock. But once again, this is just a small idea. For all we know, it could just be a dead end, and Clock might as well just be in the irrelevant category. But who knows? And even if it isn't true, Clock, like I said, still got a small amount of screen time, a bit more compared to the other irrelevant contestants. And just for that, he's also safe out of this category, just barely. Next up is Grassy at 32nd place. Um, we don't see Grassy getting that much screen time in this episode, but what makes him in relevant category is that we see Grassy helping their team with blocks a bit more than other contestants such as Fries. And because they're doing some contributions, adding blocks, making sure it's solid, just that bit of help is, I think that's just barely enough to put them in the relevant category. They did pretty good. They didn't get much screen time, but they contributed to their team a little bit. And in 31st place, we have Snowball, basically for all the same reason as Grassy. I just feel like Snowball contributed just a tiny bit more. Tied in 30th place, we have Donut and Barf Bag. Despite getting very little screen time, they're not too low on the list because they're probably the ones who put the most blocks on their team. And it seemed to make a bit more of a difference because this got them first place. And this gives Pitt a token, which might be important in future episodes. Who knows? In BFB, because Pitt had a token, Leafy joined the losers. So you never know what's going to happen. Maybe just by contributing Donut and Barf Bag could have helped their team get first, get Pitt the token. But on the other hand, it could just be a dead end, and it's not too big of a deal. Either way, they probably did help the most, maybe Needle too, for Block Tower. So that's what puts them not too low. Tied at 28th, we got Price Tag, Nickel, and Cake. We see them working as somewhat background security guards for Just Not's Tower. They don't have that many lines, but the reason I didn't put them too low either is because Just Not just didn't get that much screen time this episode, and they got like a relatively decent amount of screen time for Just Not. So without them, Just Not could have been like really obsolete this episode and got very little screen time. So just for that, they get to be somewhat high, not really at the same time. Ramon gets the 25th spot. First Death Pack member on this list. We can't blame her for being the Death Pack again member that's lowest on this list because she was dead for like the first half of the episode. But other than that, Ramon doesn't do too much. She introduces Naily, so without her, Naily would be the second character along with Teardrop to get 0 lines. And she makes some contributions to the team. She helps Just Not, just wrangle in a bit more screen time. But other than that, she doesn't do much, especially compared to the other members of her team, who arguably got the most screen time out of any other team. Tied in 24th place, we have Golf Ball and TV. I honestly didn't expect TV to get this high on the list, but I guess they did. We don't see them do too much in this episode, but Golf Ball and TV arguing is basically 90% of what Are You OK does in this video. They're basically the contestants that have the most screen time on their team. And for that reason alone, they aren't going to get placed too low on this list. Pillow gets 22nd. We don't see Pillow do too much important things this episode either. She does kill Price Tag. She gets a decent amount of screen time. And she's also led Ramon to just not, which caused her to knock blocks a bit, giving remote more screen time. But other than that, Pillow doesn't do that much in this video. In 21st place, we have Book. Book doesn't do that much in this video either. She questions Pillow's behavior, and she also reveals about Balmy, how aggressive he is. Like, we wouldn't see Balmy throwing the tantrum he did if Book didn't try to help build blocks with him. And she also builds blocks for the team towards the end, but other than that, Book doesn't do that much that's very important, and that's why she's not any further down this list. We're at our top 20, starting with Rocky. Rocky gets fairly more screen time compared to the other contestants that I previously mentioned, as well as doing more than he normally does, so he improved a bit, because in BFB he didn't get too much screen time. He does do a bit and causes some events in the show, like how he temporarily joined Deathpack's team because he felt left out and then gets shifted back. And this small interaction changed the show a bit, but not too much. He did vomit some blocks out for Deathpack and his team, but other than that, he's not the most supported character. In number 18, we have Penn. Penn doesn't get that much screen time this episode, but he does abuse Deathpack's weakness to protect his team, which puts Black Hole and Penn on negative relations. And it kind of affects the episode a bit. This made Black Hole mad, and like it could have affected the title of the video, Black Hole's worst day of his life. And like I said, Black Hole talks about it over time. It shows a bit more about Black Hole and his personality, and how Penn doesn't seem to have any sympathy for Black Hole being a previous teammate. But other than that, he doesn't do too much this episode. Flying their way into number 17, we have Cloudy. Cloudy gets a decent amount of screen time before the kick at stake, and that puts him above a few others. And he also affects quite a few of the events this episode. Because he dropped the gun, Teardrop got it, and it caused the Teardrop versus Deathpack to get seen, which is pretty major. But the reason why this doesn't put him higher is because it was pretty indirect. Sure, he was one of the things that led to it, but he did directly cause it, and that's why I can't put him higher on the list, but I'm not going to ignore that, and because of that, he gets this spot. In number 16, we have Balmy. You might be surprised why Balmy is so high, considering he gets very little screen time in this episode. But we have to remember that Balmy was basically the only person who stacked that many blocks in his team. And who knows, without him, maybe Just Not would get up for elimination because the rest of the team completely forgot about the challenge. And yeah, all the other members of Just Not weren't doing anything important. Pillow just basically walked away, and Balmy was the only person who was doing any building, so because of that, he gets to number 16. 15th spot is handed to Pin. Pin does have a major arc in this episode. We see her complaining her team is cheating, and that's basically most of teammates. Now, this was the same thing that happened with TV at Golf Ball. So if I'm ranking them for the same reasons, why are they so different? Well, because Pin's arc seems more important to the plot, it has more dialogue, and it could also be symbolizing that Pin's friendship with Coiny is weakened. And it does show a bit more of teammates' dynamic, where TV at Golf Ball was basically just them arguing with each other, and that normally happens on a daily basis with anyone who's on a team with Golf Ball. In 14th place, we have Winner. Winner doesn't cause too much difference in this episode, but the main reason he's this high is because he basically stabled the S together. Most of the dialogue lines from the S comes from Winner, and like I said, it also could potentially open an arc between Winner, Eggy, Clock, and Teardrop, because Winner goes to Eggy, says it's nice of her to recover Teardrop when they're on different teams, but then Eggy just gets mad at Winner and he decides to ask Clock about it. That could lead to a potential arc, but like I said, maybe it's just a small interaction and it could lead to nothing, so I can't place Winner any higher than this. Basketball gets 13th spot and Robot Flower gets 12th spot. And I'm talking about both of them because they're here for similar reasons. They have a whole scene to themselves, and basketball basically does most of the lifting for the strongest team on earth. Sure, she did stack any blocks, but she does have a lot of lines, and towards the end, there's an argument about basketball and her leadership and tossing it on Eggy. Robot Flower, on the other hand, gets one spot above because she's the one who gave the gun to Death Pact again, which Teardrop got, and that caused another scene. But like I said, it wasn't direct, so I can't put Robot Flower any further than that, and basketball either. Just shy of top 10, in number 11, we have Eraser. Eraser doesn't get too much screen time, but the little screen time he had is pretty important rather than filler dialogue. Basically, Eraser goes around knocking people's towers down and saying, "What are you gonna do about it?" And this generates some humor and it makes people like Eraser a bit more. When TPOT 1 came, predictions said that either TV or Eraser would get out first when Team Are You OK is up for elimination, but this scene gives Eraser a bit more personality and it could change things a bit, as well as him causing a lot of rage between the other contestants, and it could have potentially changed who would get eliminated. Now let's get to top 10. All contestants here had some sort of impact in the show, starting with Katie. Katie doesn't do much with the actual challenge, but she has a large dialogue conversation with Tu, and it reveals a lot about Tu's personality. In Teapot 1, we didn't know that much about Tu, but in Teapot 2, we know a little bit more. And we also get Katie's opinion, and we know more about Tu and Katie overall because of this. And since this scene is somewhat significant, Katie gets top 10. Ninth spot is a tie between Fanny and Lightning. The reason why they're this high is just because they got a lot of screen time. Fanny and Lightning getting a lot of dialogue for the Team Death Pact again. And they definitely contributed a lot to this episode, getting a lot of screen time, a lot of dialogue, and making several differences. They don't do anything too majorly important, but the amount of length they're on is just what puts them in the top 10. Just barely above Lightning and Fanny, in 7th place, we have Marker. Now, Marker is like Lightning and Fanny. He just got a lot of lines and screen time for Death Pact again. But what puts him just a little bit above them is how he got a bit more dialogue, more humor, but most importantly, just one major scene that shocked everyone, which was when Marker was about to get shot by Teardrop, he rolls in the smoothest animation, bites Teardrop's arm, grabs a gun, and shouts, "She's disarmed," as he runs away. And a lot of people love this scene a lot, and that's just what puts him above Fanny and Lightning. Not just this scene alone, despite it being significant, but also the fact that he gets a few more dialogue lines compared to the other two. In 6th place, we have Tree. Tree does a lot for Death Pack. He's basically the main person who builds blocks for the team. And like Winner, he's a bit of a staple that just holds everything together and does the most important works in terms of building the tower. He moves his team to a lot of places. He could even be a future team leader. He suggested that they steal blocks from the others. He made decisions about building and who to take from and Teardrop attacking. And that's just what puts him high. The decisions he made, the screen time he got, and how we basically stapled Death Pact against Arc together. Starting our top 5, we have Coiny. It was Coiny's idea to use glue, which is one of the reasons that teammates got first and got that token. And he acted basically as a team leader of his team. He moved the team forward and got a lot of dialogue. He did most of the lifting in the conversation against Pin. And that just what puts him in top 5, that he basically holds his team together like Tree, like Winner, but does it a bit more and even suggested a winning strategy. In 4th place, we have Teardrop. Teardrop debuted this episode and she already did a lot. She has plot armor on her team because she's basically the only person, And she caused the Death Pact versus Teardrop scene, which was also pretty major. Another thing that gives her extra points to get to top 5 is how she basically made the big difference of who got up for elimination by pushing the last block on Tisto's tower, causing them to get up for elimination. This reason that she caused a major difference to the show is what puts her this high, as well as generally just having a lot of important roles. Starting our podium in third place, we have Needle. Needle once again makes a huge difference by running up to Saw, grabbing her, going up the tower, cutting and saving her team. What puts her above Teardrop is how hard this was to pull off. Teardrop had a bit less control because Teardrop just used common sense. Tisto was at one block, so that was the only team she could really have pushed to make an effect. Needle, however, basically did this all by herself. Even with Saw, she probably could have grabbed anything sharp, run up, and sawed the thing off, which would have came in very clutch, and she basically saved her whole team. Second place goes to Belle. Belle made a huge difference this episode. She tried to knock over teammate's tower, failed by getting stuck in super glue, and then pulls the whole thing down. She also knocked several towers by other people, because of Eraser giving them that idea, which causes a huge difference in impact to the game, just by knocking towers around, giving contestants like golf ball ideas, and that's what puts her so high. The final scene with Belle grabbing the tower and then Needle sawing it off was also very impressive. And number one, first place, gold medal, top above all, we have Black Hole. Maybe Black Hole didn't make too many differences, but he definitely had a lot of screen time. He's the contestant with the most lines. And he still has a few major differences. He sucked up all of his team's blocks at the start, forcing them to steal from others. He absorbed Teardrop's blocks, causing her to knock Tisto's tower, which caused them to be up for elimination. He was absorbing blocks from Are You Okay, which made him angry, and it changes the relationship between Black Hole and Penn. And we see a lot about him. It's revealed. He gets more personality in this episode compared to the others, and that's what gives him the gold medal. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. If you're new, be sure to like the video, smash that subscribe button, poke that little bell, the bell sensitive. Thanks for watching.